Oh, you have a podcast? What's it about? And then my answer is, we just sit and talk because
Do you
I have
really?
to, oh, dude, I am so bad at answering comfortably and
You
confidently.
just annoyed me a little bit right there. I'm not gonna lie.
Most conversations about connection tell you what to think, but are easy answers ever enough? I'm Keith Richardson. With my co host Gerren Taylor, this is More in Common. Honest conversations about what keeps us apart and what doesn't have to. Come think with us.
What's
You
Purdue
know,
doing?
nothing. I
Okay.
think
All right. Yeah.
we
Yeah.
often celebrate things
That's right.
based on accomplishment and circumstance, and
Mhm.
let's just celebrate things for being things that we appreciate in our lives. And I appreciate my time at Purdue.
What what a profound way to start this episode there, cowboy. Oh, very deep all of a sudden, my guy. Well,
Yeah,
it's good to see you
maybe.
there, Keith. This is the More in Common podcast. I'm Gerren Taylor. That's Keith Richardson. We're back this week doing more show. What?
We're just doing more show.
We're doing more show, peeps. We had our arc about the cost of individualism and the things that we gave up, and it sparked thoughts in me as well,
Yeah.
about just how meta that is in a way that we're doing this show and talking about these things. But in reality, we often say as well that it's very hard work. It's not easy. It's like practicing a martial art or a craft or something like that. Like, not every day is a shining example of who you are.
Yep.
And to that end, I wanted to talk about that this week,
Yep.
about where we fall short. For instance, I don't know that I sound like this all the time. Just talking, you know? I feel like on this show, I get a lot of I see myself on the reels on the internet, and I feel like, ooh, profound clip. But in reality, like, sometimes I say silly stuff.
No, you often say silly stuff and you don't always talk. Like we've worked together in different capacities
Yeah.
and it's not a always thing. It actually is an interesting reflection for me because I too am the same. Like I don't always talk about these things. In fact, there are a handful of folks, and by a handful, I mean like two, so not even a handful of folks that I consistently talk about these things with. And
Yeah.
yet,
That
we've built this show, and in preparation for like this conversation, it's really had me reflecting on. You asked this question in prep: is who you are on the show different than who you are in an everyday life? Which I think is a common frame of thinking about, like, is Stephen Colbert in person, or Stephen Colbert, is he the same on the show as he is in person? And really reflecting on like what that means for me at a real meta point of view, because then thinking like we're trying to engage an audience that by creating a space to think about things, heavy things. And the reality is, like, there are times when we get on the microphone and I'm not in the mood to talk, but we have the catalyst for it to do it. And it forces us into the posture to have the conversations that we end up having. And I've come to some really interesting observations relative to that. Um, yeah.
It's like my nephew told me the other day. Sometimes, Uncle, you're a real asshole.
Mm,
And I was like, yep,
mm,
sure am.
interesting.
And I accept that, because of how I think I am sometimes shorter patience, less curious than I am on the show. Um, But also, I think that I do it out of some of the things that were drilled into me about awareness and perception and how you operate in the world in a safe way, you know? Um, and being sure that you're being aware of your surroundings and things like that. But that doesn't always align with the framing, for instance, of how we try to improve communication here and on the show and approaching things with deep curiosity. Uh, and I think that there is also a balance to all of the things that we are, like I said, constructed with, grown up with, the ways that we interact with the world, right? Like one of the frames for me, I think that happens a lot when I'm very curt about something or very direct about something is working in live television for so long. Like if we're doing something live, like you got to do it now. There is no thinking, stop thinking and start moving. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't have time for you to be trying to process what I'm saying. You need to get out of the way. Uh, and not just for the sake of the show sometimes, but also for safety, like literal moving parts that will take you out. I've seen it happen. Stage pieces coming off of a rolling deck, somebody's not paying close enough attention, bang, smack, you're on the ground all of a sudden, right? Um, so that kind of awareness is as an expectation I think I project on the people that is not aligned all the time with the patient readiness that we try to work with on the show. Not to say that I don't do it at all, but it's something that I think stood out in my own reflection about what we were going to talk about this week and the gap between how we operate and what we talk about and what we live.
Yeah, there's a weird thing happening in this moment of, like, the nervousness to completely share. One of the big thing for me, the meta connection, and you talked about it, is safety. And as I've really reflected on this one question that came up for me in this is, why do I do this? And what I've come to realize is this is who I am. It took me a really long time, and I think this is an important thing to unpack, or maybe unpack, share, to get to this place of understanding that a social value I provide is a grounding for others,
Mm,
for others' space and others' time and others' uh, awareness, a safety, right? It's what we teach in the More in Common Consulting when we, especially with, like, the program we do with the 49ers, is giving people space to understand how to create that space for them and for others so that they can open up and share. And I'm really uncomfortable being a part of that space that I give to others, not just in the consulting, but in general, because I don't know where it fits in the different social ecosystems that come about, right? Whether it's baseball, whether it's a, a group of non-sports fans, or whether it's a group of my dart playing, or like whatever it has been over time, is like, what is my value? Like, we talked about this relative to social ecosystems. Everybody contributes something. I know I contribute safety, but that's not always necessary, right? In fact, there's just normal everyday living where we don't need to talk about politics, or we don't need to talk about philosophy. We don't need to talk about these things. And in the way I've navigated, and we can come back to this, a hyper individualistic life due to the way I grew up, in this way I've navigated the world of competitive growth and all of the things that we've talked about recently, really understanding how I can be that in those spaces is really hard because it just doesn't come up all the time. And what I've come to realize is, like, part of this podcast, and this goes back to when Rodney and I were doing it, it was an opportunity to be me in a space that had the boundaries and established the safety for that level of depth and conversation and reflecting on the difficulties of like just what it is to be human in 2026 and how it is to navigate and think about all of these things. It's like, man, I like everything we talk about, I'm talking to my past self about in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
but doing it in such an intellectual way that keeps me out of it just the same because it's the space to be me, but not let you really see me. And that's a lot of how I navigate everyday interaction, talking about not using the tools that we talk about, showing up, not without authenticity, but without real participation in the spaces that I am. I'm there to give you space. But boy, if you give me space, it's really hard. And that's one of the things that, even if you listen to every episode that we've ever produced, you find, right? Like Aaron, you come at it with a little more vulnerability and share and a little more community oriented. And I take a very intellectual approach to everything. And so MIC is me. And yet it's hard to truly vocalize, like, I built this so I can be me because I don't know how to be me in the ways that we talk about being yourself in other spaces.
It's very interesting. So, in a way, this is the outlet of the way you wish you could be in those spaces sometimes?
Yes, deep conversation. Like if we think about, you know, what we don't have. So if I even go back, I'm an only child. My parents were divorced when I was 2. My mom worked full time. Um, I had a very safe and nice upbringing, but I also grew up in an extended family that was littered with judgment. And so I'm always fearing this external judgment in like group settings, especially because I don't know your parameters for what's acceptable. It's a group setting, and every group setting is slightly different. I went to college, spent first 20 years of my life in New Hampshire, but then I went to Indiana, I lived in New York, I lived in Chicago, and I started like I'm forming different groups, but never really ingratiating myself into them. And yet I'm missing, and you talk about the impact of this show, like that nature of social isolation, I'm missing that connection, that deep connection. And part of that is because I could do this all day long, every day with anybody. But most people don't have the capacity, not mentally, but emotionally, or even time,
Yeah,
or even
yeah,
desire to
yeah.
engage in just crazy philosophical,
It's exhausting.
psychological, sociological. It's exhausting. And for me, it's energizing. And I don't like small talk, which I know a lot of people can resonate with that. And yet I'm super social and also care deeply about community and connection.
I asked you this yesterday, and you answered one way. I'm gonna ask you again because I feel like you're presenting another kind of angle on it. So, is there a person in your life right now who would be surprised by this show? Like, not because they don't know you well enough, but because they know you too well? Like, is there anybody who knows you so well that they think that this is weird that you have a show about this thing that you don't actually do in public?
So, and I think this is an element of the dynamics in which we talk about there. I honestly, in the reflection of this, the question is, are the people who know me the best, would they be surprised I have this? And the answer is no, because I let them in. Is the people who know me well would probably ask the question, what are you like? Oh, that's interesting. Oh, you have a podcast? What's it about? And then my answer is, we just sit and talk because
Do you
I have
really?
to, oh, dude, I am so bad at answering comfortably and
I think you
confidently.
just annoyed me a little bit right there, I'm not gonna lie. That's your answer when people ask you about our show?
And
"Hey,
I'm,
yeah, we
I'm,
just,
I'm, sh-
we talk about stuff."
I'll be honest, I don't really have an answer. Like, I don't have an answer. I'm comfortable because it is this idea that you're watching the show, you're watching me in a way that you probably don't know me to engage, but it doesn't surprise you that I engage that way, if that makes sense. Right? Because it's not some veneer and I'm really but anyway, like it at the end of the day, it's an interesting element of thinking about when you do a show like this, one, why are you doing it? And two, are you the same person outside as you are on camera? And like to your point, you bring up like sometimes you're an asshole, but you're not an asshole.
I mean, I think that's the gap, right? Like, the practice is real, the person is incomplete, everything is a journey, um, and what do you do when you get to those moments? Like, for instance, in talking to my nephew about it, I didn't just go, "Well, fuck you." You know what I mean? Like, I I I thought about it quietly, I reflected upon his words, and then I answered him, about why it is the way it is sometimes like that. And I do think there is a lot of things that practicing within this show has helped me close the gap on. Things that we talk about, right? Like entering a new dating situation recently and hearing some of the things we talked about with Jen Oliver about the truth uh, in the back of my head as we have those discussions about getting to know each other and about what a strong connection looks like in the sense of what I want to model and need for both my own emotional safety and the emotional intelligence that I want and hope to have from somebody, from a partner in my life, for instance, right? So,
So let me, yeah, go ahead.
no, well, I was just going to say, like, just saying that there are moments where I notice the practice of this work happening well in real life, as well as noticing times where I fall short of it. And so that we all can kind of work on w- and notice and give ourselves grace for the moments where we do well and where we fall short.
When, because you're in a new relationship and you just said something that I think is really important relative to the 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 journey we've been on in this new iteration of the show for the last year and a half. And one piece of that is being honest in those dynamics per our conversation with Jen and that episode art. How has that worked? Like, how has that, like, what kind of outcomes are you seeing in that particular relationship?
Yeah. Super question. I think that what I've noticed is trust and comfort seems to be a lot easier to come across. Because it is very upfront about expectations and boundaries. That I think that by me modeling that in some ways, it makes the other person more comfortable in responding in kind, and it also kind of sets the like bar of, "Oh, it's cool that we can talk like this," that we can be like this. Um, and I find that to be very rewarding in the emotional safety sense, right? So you go into it with a different expectation. You go into it trying to establish a rapport that helps, I think, protect both of you in the long term about what you're doing, how and why.
Have
And it's
you, so taking it out of the conceptual,
yeah.
have you been, has there been fear or trepidation in doing so since it is a new relationship, right? And we often will present new relationships with like, you're
Is
wanting
it
to show up your
scary?
best, right? Yeah.
Yeah. No, is it scary? Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I've also kind of come to terms with that part of And maybe it's age in some ways too, right? Like, I'm not getting any younger, guys. You know, gray streak going up there. If you're on the YouTube, you can see it. If you're listening to us,
Hey,
it's a little
you
soft
just
and
turned 43, so
that's
happy
right.
birthday a couple weeks ago at the time of this, airing. Yeah, yeah,
And, I'm gonna I'm gonna say that part of that, like, knowing that if somebody's not for you, they're not for you thing, and like, hey, this is where we're at. This is what's happening. Why dance around it? Why waste each other's time? If it ain't gonna line up, then like let's skip it. If it does, then cool. And seeing it line up, I think is pretty cool. But also seeing that kind of justified in other places, I think manifested in other places. Seeing other people talk about some of the same things that we talk about organically, right? You know, how sometimes you feel like your phone's spying on you, like you're talking about a subject with your friend or your partner, and then you get an ad for it. I find that to
yeah.
happen about things that we talk about on our show. Like all of a sudden, I get a bunch of reels in my algorithm that talks about the same types of subjects. I'm like, yeah, that's what we're doing. And it is, I think, important to note that we're not the only ones going through these things, right? Like the gap between who we want to be and who we are every day is a constant struggle. You don't have 100% of you every day at all, anytime, ever, right? Like there are some days you're
Yeah.
really good at one part of something and not so good at the other part of the things that you do. And then you're one good, you show up as another version of yourself really well, and the other person who you are, you still are, just isn't as prominent or isn't as strong that day. And that's okay.
Yeah, I think your example of honesty is really, I appreciate you sharing it, first of all. It's a new relationship, and it's on the success side of things, but you also mentioned something that's really important that has impacted me in this show. Then this has been a struggle for me for a really long time. Um, and part of the reason why I want to build community out of this show to just navigate the different complexities of everybody's personal development journey. Because I've had a lot of different complexities. And one of those, going back to what I was saying before, is understanding how I fit into different social ecosystems versus how I fit in one-on-one relationships, but also understanding how those one-on-one relationships fit into my overall social ecosystem. So to your point about, honesty might not work in this particular case. Let's play a counterfactual with your current relationship, but having an understanding, this idea of the social concentric circles that we've talked about so
Mm,
much has like really started to shape how I engage and the expectations that I have of social spaces. There are times where it's like, oh, this is a fun space and I like it, but it doesn't have to be more than this space. It doesn't have to carry forward. It doesn't have to be ongoing. It doesn't have to be. It is what it is. And I can recognize it for what it is. Whereas in my past, I have looked at because of that uncertainty of where I fit, I've looked at every situation as an opportunity to be the place I fit. And then it doesn't work out because everybody else in there isn't in the same place that I am in that moment. And then I think it's all my fault, or I'm the problem, or I'm
you
bad,
you
when in
take on that.
reality, I take on that so hard. But this conversation of concentric circles is like, oh, I see who my intimate relationships in social ecosystem are. I see where the continuation goes. It doesn't change how social I am, but it changes my own expectations. I think the journey that I continue to go on is how is allowing others who give me the space to be me, is allowing myself to be like more vulnerable, more open to
Mhm.
the question of, look, I had this, I'll use this example. I play poker in the winters. So we have this poker league that we do, just a casual group of, 11 dudes right now. And one guy who I only ever see in the pot or in only ever see during poker came up to me after a poker game one time. He's like, "Hey, I check out your clips. I really want to get into your podcast. Like, it's really interesting, and it's really about things that I'm interested in." So, what an opening to have a conversation. There are other people around, and I don't know him that well. And my concern immediately goes into, oh my God, he's going to criticize, judge, or whatever it is. And other people are going to hear me talk about this. And I
Right.
don't know what their thoughts are. So I go, oh, that's cool. Thanks. Right.
Crickets.
And,
Yeah.
and like, I think about it from his point of view. It's like, oh, he doesn't really want to talk about these things. And it's like, I do. But I get really clammed up because now I have to open myself up to more people that might ask questions, that
Mm.
might judge, that might
Mhm.
look at me in some weird way because I do this thing. And and so I don't take this space and transport it to other spaces really well.
Yeah.
And it's funny because we ask people like, "Hey, take what we talked about and talk about it." And it's like, I struggle to do that too. It's hard. It's hard because of emotional entanglement with past experience and life and all that stuff. Yeah.
We're gonna come up on time on this section of the conversation. We're gonna continue this conversation, and I want to dig more into that about why the gap exists. What do you do when it happens? And how we all are going to work that together. This is the
Work
More in
that
Common
out together.
podcast. I'm Gerren Taylor. That's Keith Richardson. We'll see you all next week with more of this conversation.